I'm Delver pilled, and I like it.
Next on Eternal Turtles.
Stop, I need more stuff. Can you see I need more stuff? But now we go.
Big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. If you want to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurtles. In return, you'll get ad-free content and a bonus episode every single week. Thanks for watching. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always is Phil Blackman. Phil, how's it going?
Zach, did we solve it? Have we found? Have we come to the light, Zach? Have we found exactly what we needed to do in this metagame that we can both find joy and success?
I don't know that I would say we've solved it, but I'll tell you what, man. Like like the thumbnail said, I haven't played Delver. I haven't flipped a blind flip to Delver in like over 4 years, and it felt good. It felt right. It used to be my whole personality was just playing Rug Delver, but like I'll tell you, man, the deck feels very good. It just everything about it. Like last time I got to play Delver was in like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of 2019 was the last time I was even like actively trying to flip Delvers. So I'm still working out things. We had an episode, we had the bonus episode where I talk about like some of my struggles with the deck and just getting back into how it works. But like I just 3-1 the local. I'm gonna start playing this on Magic Online again. And you know what also was great about this deck, Phil?
Pray
A
tell.
Delver amount of extra time left in the round in between rounds.
Oh, is that something that you haven't been used to?
I have been playing decks that don't give me a lot of time in between rounds. Like you have to like with Cephalid Breakfast. There's a lot of hemming and hawing and like this or that or this or that, and playing against this. You have your A/B plan. They have a way to stop it. Then you have to go to your backup plan. The matches take some time, but with Delver, you just do the thing. You
Mm-hmm.
put the Delver down and you tempo your opponent out. And if the game runs well for you, it runs well. If the game runs bad for you, you know pretty quickly if it's not gonna work.
Yeah, and this is also a long time coming because you've been talking. You have always gone back to the heuristics of a Delver player when you play decks. Like you were like, I can't let go. I'm still playing 2 days when I play Cephalid Breakfast. I can't let go of all of it. And how does the deck currently feel post ban? Like, what was the list that you put? Did you play stock blue red with the green spot?
I played a stock rug deck. Rug as in like it's playing 2 Questing Druids. I think the one difference I made with the deck, just because I only own 3 volcanic islands, I'll eventually have a 4th one, was I put a Thundering Falls in the Surveil land. Not a
Yep.
good idea. Not for that deck. You really need that turn 1. Like opening that on my against my only loss uh, against my opponent and being like, okay, well I have everything I need to go off, but not a land. And then I play a Surveil land tapped, and he's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna try and reanimate this guy on my turn, and I'm like, ugh. I'm like 2
Yeah.
turns behind.
The only time
It,
I've seen the Thundering Falls I've seen Thundering Falls in and out, but the times where I
yeah,
have seen it, it's usually because it functions as the 19th land, and
yeah.
it is typically the 19th land because there's some number of 3 drops that they're post boarding into as whatever they're teching against.
Yeah.
So like if that's the only time I've really seen it. Otherwise, yeah, it's been absent from the Delver list because of the reason that you talked about.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, I won't say I haven't lost a step here or there with the deck, but the things that I loved about this deck, that just like drew me to it in the first place was that like the counterplay, the like back and forth, the like everything's on the stack, you're trying to like, protect the queen. You're playing a very legacy game of Magic against your opponent. And I immediately like just fell in love again in my first match against this cat Lee. Um or he was on Grixis Delver, I was on Rug Delver, and the first game we just like traded back and forth, and I like won the game with 0 cards in hand and a Delver on the board, just like getting there. And then eh, you know, after that I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I remember, like it's so hard to explain. It's like riding a bike, like it just like everything started to click for me again. I was like, walked in not super confident in my deck choice because I had Cephalid Breakfast on me as well, and I was like, maybe I'll play this. I was like, you know what? I'll just play Rug Delver. It's the local. Let's find out. And as soon as I got into round 2, I was like, oh yeah, like I remember this. I know what I'm doing. And
Mm-hmm.
round 2 was it just like everything fell into place for me for that. So it just felt good to be able to be like, okay, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. This deck still feels the same. I'm getting payoffs like for every like everything that I've done to like get to where I am as a legacy player. All those payoffs are present in Delver, dazing, figuring out like, the classic daze, even though you have the mana, pick up the land, brainstorm the land away because you've got plenty of land, like all that stuff, like we have a whole like why is daze good, why is brainstorm good, like tutorials, which we should probably update, but like all of that stuff is there. And I don't know, man, I feel like it's the deck to be playing right now. It's also funny, a total side point, Phil, have you noticed that like cephalid breakfast is really not like, everyone was really worried about Nadu, but like I haven't seen any of that stuff. Like, I'm the local guy at the meta that in my meta that plays it, but like locally I haven't seen any of that stuff. And I don't know if that's because people are like, oh, like I'm not going to play this deck because they're going to ban it soon, or it just like no one's interested. No, it's not as powerful as like people thought it was.
I think Nadu is still popular. I mean, it's the variations of Nadu that are still just trying to put Nadu on the stack are popular. The I think that there is the difference of post meta of like blue red Delver has come back, so red as a color has come back. Nadu has never, the blue Nadu decks have never really had to engage with Red Blast in a meaningful way since Nadu existed, because Nadu came out at the same time as Frog, and Red sort of ceased to become part of the metagame outside of Ancient Tomb decks. So outside of Painter, it never really had to contend with like a non-combo deck, like an interactive deck that's also playing Power Blast. So I think there's something to be said there. I think also the boost that Oops All Spells has gotten since the ban as becoming a significant part of the metagame has also shifted how people interact with graveyard decks. And there is some amount of, if people are going, have to go lower to the ground to fight something like Oops out of the graveyard, that means that Cephalid Breakfast is also getting some amount of hate for that. And then whether or not they've adjusted for that. I think that the combination of red coming back into the metagame also means just the lower to the ground, like Bolt Chain Lightning style decks interacting with like mana dorks, and so your Day's Wasteland being able to also disrupt your mana dorks is also tough for Nadu, which is notoriously got soft mana. So I think there's some influences that maybe have shown that like Nadu isn't fully the menace that it was believed to become post-thing. Now there's the argument of like, do we want every blue-white X deck to also have to function as a Nadu deck, to exist? I mean, remains to be seen. I think that like the shift that we've seen of red coming back into the metagame outside of Painter and Ancient Tomb is something that people are still experimenting with. I don't know about you, but like when we talk about blue red Delver with the splashing Questing Druid, like when Questing Druid is played against me, I still feel pretty underwhelmed by it as a card advantage spell. Now, I don't know how valuable the body is against certain decks that you're otherwise soft to, and the threat density is better. But like every time
It's
somebody
just another card,
every time somebody casts a Questing Druid against me, I'm just always like, man, wouldn't you, like, if you're playing Delver and DRC and then some other one drop, like, wouldn't something like Chart a Course as your card advantage spell be better? Like, isn't something like, if you need a, like, if you're charting and then like Questing Druid putting the cards out, and then like every time Questing Druid is cast against me and they don't get the full 2-card value off of it, I was like, that was an insane play for me. Not only did you not advance your board, you also didn't actually get the value, because you're 1/1 for 2. You're 1/1 for 2 mana that needs time to grow, and so I'll have time to interact beforehand. And then if we're going to spend the time like fighting over your one threat that I know is coming, like don't get me wrong, like when it does convert the 2 cards, it's amazing.
And it's like expressive iteration. Like there are times when like you just like get 2 lands and you're like, okay.
I'm not saying that like it's a bad card. I'm just saying that like it feels to me like every time it just seems like it's the de facto like card advantage spell that also makes you have to go into a splash. And if you're playing otherwise just blue red Delver, I keep thinking like, wouldn't some threat that is faster that also can, or some advantage, other card advantage spell that you know is going to convert otherwise all the time, like the 2 cards for 1 card always be better. Now,
Yeah,
I guess
I
it's
mean,
like
a
if you
2
think,
mana draw 2 is sort of the standard as far as, like, what is playable in this format as far as, like, card advantage is concerned, you know?
it might also be that like something else that well, maybe people in the comments will let me know is that like the fact that Questing Druid doesn't actually draw cards, so it's insulated against Orcish Bowmasters, is also a reason as to why it would be the go-to as opposed to anything else. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on it, Zach?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I like otherwise I just play blue red, but like I like the questing druid specifically.
Yeah.
I see you got your magic mine there. I was going to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about that after we went through the metagame breakdown, but I do want to ask like how's that working out for you? You're on like week 3 now.
Yeah, I'm on week 3, and I found that it is sort of like exactly what we were talking about. Like, I don't know, I just like I've been using it sort of incidentally. It's like it actually doesn't. It tastes pretty good. So like, I don't know, man. Like, I have trouble sleeping sometimes. Like, I don't always feel fresh when I wake up, and then like I just will always chug some amount of caffeine, and this thing not having caffeine, and then I don't feel like I'm crashing, and I don't know, like.
Yeah.
I, the thing, you want to know my problem, Zach? My problem
Mm.
is like when we get into the section where we talk about my theory crafting on miracles, I can never turn it off, Zach. I want to and I can't. Like
Yeah.
I'll like go about my day, I'll like do my job, I'll like do the stuff that I have to do, I'll like handle everything that I need to handle, and then it's like, okay, it's late, it's time to go to bed. And then my mind is just going, man, it would be great if I could go down to 17 lands in my miracles deck. How could I do that? And then I'm like
I mean,
thinking
I know
about how to
that
do it.
game.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about how to do. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've been like you like you're saying about turning yourself off is like all the caffeine and everything, and I've been weaning myself off of coffee. Mostly because of my stomach. Like I just like you have like 3 cups of coffee and like your stomach is like oh you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I still make it part of my morning ritual. I still like have a cup of coffee every morning. But taking the Magic Mind stuff, I don't feel like I have to have like 3 or 4 cups of coffee to like stay in the game and like feel like I'm not gonna die by the time lunch comes around, or like after lunch, I just crash because I stopped having caffeine. It like, it's like a slow rollout.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also fortunate that like I don't think like I'm always skeptical of stuff, and so like the fact that they were like, hey, do you want to try stuff for free? Like, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm obviously not going to turn down value, so like we tried it and it's good. And then the like one thing that like I'm super conscious about like on our show is like I never want to like peddle something that we don't use or don't believe in, because like
yeah,
I don't know, we just don't. It's like this isn't our full time jobs. It's like we enjoy this stuff and we would do it anyway. So like
yeah,
it's
exactly.
like I'm not going to peddle something for no reason if like we're not using it, or if it's not actually like
Yeah,
I don't know
and you want it to be
valuable.
like a good value too. You don't want to be like, hey, here's the thing that's really great, but like also like it's super expensive. Like they're giving us like a 45% off code.
Yeah, yeah.
Dirtle's Jan is like a 45% off code for it, which is like,
It's
if we can pass that along to people and they get a little bit of value out of it, or like, it improves their lives. Great. I'm happy for it.
the thing that I'll report back on is when we go to the next MagicCon in Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't know about like typically the convention centers around like those events, and it's like also whenever there's big tournaments or whatever around convention halls, like sometimes the food around the area is like just trash. And so it's like
Yeah.
you spend all day in the convention hall until you get to big dinner at the end of the day where you actually eat something. And so I would just have like protein bars and like other like stuff that is otherwise not necessarily good for you to like
Protein
try and
bars and Red Bull and,
yeah,
staying,
just like,
staying.
fueled and focused or whatever, because I know that every round I'm going to be making 500 micro decisions that all like impact
Yeah.
the whatever. So I'm going to test this out at an actual MagicCon and report back my findings if
That's that's a
it
great
actually makes me
idea.
feel good.
I need to make sure that I have a stock for MagicCon as well. That's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
a great idea. But
So
yeah, so anyhow, if you're interested in that, like I said, we have a link below, and you get 45% off of a packet of the Magic Mind stuff, and they have the sleep one too, which is great. I've been taking that. I wake up nice and like refreshed. I don't feel like like I sleep fine. I like go to sleep like easy anyhow, but like waking up had always been a problem for me. So having something that like also like it wakes you up and you just feel like oh now I am awake, is
Zach,
good. But
when you wake up, are you like me where you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to wake up and now I'm going to try and play predict again?
no,
You
no,
know,
not at all.
you,
Not in this meta.
now, oh, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Zach. Like, where are you now on? So you're on Blue Red Devil. You're playing. You're back to your roots,
Yeah.
and I'm curious because I feel like Delver is mostly stock, and then it has sort of reverted back to exactly where it was, like before any of these other new cards have since, like
It's
since
like
now.
5 years ago. Yeah.
It's like people just sort of like went back to the Jujubee style of rug that won an Eternal Weekend, like before all the new busted cards like
You
came
know,
out. It's like, is there actually, is like the pre-con of Dragon Rage Channeler and Murktide Regent just like enough to continue fueling the deck, or is there actually any room to maneuver or innovation to be had? Because like, I don't know. I mean,
well,
I'm not
here's
a believer in Questing Druid, but I also don't have any rest of the deck like you do.
Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel.
here's the thing, Phil. This is not Rug Delver. This is Blue Red Delver, and it happens to have a green source for the one green spell that you can
Mhm.
cast. So
Mhm.
this is it Delver, right? Like it all things equal, this is a lightning bolt to the face style. Like you're playing a chain lightning, you're playing like there are some flex slots in the deck that back in the day, Delver used to have 4 flex slots, maybe 6, depending on the
Mhm.
deck.
Mhm.
For Rug Delver. With this version of Delver, you have a lot more flex slots because you're not on the stifle game, right? So you
Mhm.
have like between 8 and 10 flex slots, right? So for this version, you're gonna get your things like, oh, I'm gonna play an extra chain lightning, I'll play an unholy heat, dismember, a force negation main, right? There's four flex slots there. But then you're also able to play. So old Rug Delver was a 12 creature deck, right? Four Goose, 4 Goyf, 4 Delver. This version gets to play 14 creatures, and 3 of them are basically spells because you're playing 1 Brazen Borrower and 2 Questing Druids, right? So you're basically able to skimp down on like your like the amount of threats that you have in the deck. You can take up less room, and then you get a little bit more utility because you're able to play Brazen Borrow and Questing Druid as spells on top of the fact that they're also creatures. But you're not like, you hold Brazen Borrow, you don't like slam it on turn 3, right? Same thing with Questing Druid. Like you're going to try and get all the value out of that card. So that means that you're actually going down one card, getting yet another flex slot, right, into the deck. And this allows you to play. If you take out those stifles from Rug Delver, right, now you can throw in the Mishra's Baubles, which feed off of the Dragon's Rage Channeler, right? And then you have those 4 other flex slots, let's say 5 other flex slots, right? So you've got what, 1 Chain Lightning, Unholy Heat, Dismember, and Force of Negation. And so you basically, that extra slot goes to one of those other creatures, right? So like it works out that way. But for me, the reason why I like this version is the velocity. This deck is trying to get you dead as fast as possible.
Mhm.
You're leaning on the fact that you have 8 1 drops, so you're almost always going to have a 1 drop on turn 1, right? And then you're just trying to make sure that you protect the queen long enough to kill your opponent. With Rug Delver, the plan was slightly different. You were like, I'm going to put down this threat that's hard to kill in terms of a nimble mongoose, or that like just is a queen to protect, right? And once you did that, you just rode that out through the game by keeping your opponent at 1 to 2 lands. If you were doing it right, it was like Wasteland, Stifle. You could get rid of 3 lands in a game pretty easily. So the metric by which this deck wins the game is totally different than old Rug Delver is. And I don't think I would play Stifle in this meta. Like I thought about it. It just doesn't seem like it's great against most of the decks that you want to be playing against. Like Stifle used to have like, okay, death and taxes, I could stop this thing. And then now you've paid 3 mana for your ghostly apparition or whatever, sky shroud apparition, whatever that how that card is called. If you can convert it even a little bit with a stifle, you're good. But like now it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gonna stifle a sowing Myco spawn, right? Which is fine and all, I guess, but like they're still getting the 3/3, which is meaningful against you. And they're still probably going to be able to fetch another thing with their kicker cost. So either you're stopping the kicker or you're stopping the destroy a land part. And I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's good enough. Stifle is good enough in this meta, whereas Mishra's Bobble, feeding the Dragon's Rage Chandler, being another free spell, being able to, basically also have Surveil 1 tacked onto it. I think that's where you want to be right now. And I just can't put myself in a brain state where I'm like, oh yeah, Stifle is the card you'd want to be playing. So in some terms, this deck is much different to me than what I was successful with back in the day. But because I know how to play Ponder, I know how to play Days, Brainstorm, Wasteland, with the Protect the Queen strategy. This deck just feels like exactly what I want to be doing in this particular meta. Whereas, if it was what I really want to be doing, yeah, I want to be Stifle Wastelanding people. But it doesn't seem like that's the smart thing to be doing right now, especially because a perfect example was consigned to memory, right? Like
Mhm.
consigned to memory is a better spell for sure, right? And it has similar cross hatchets for its use. But perfect example is playing against Peter. Peter reanimated a Traxa against me. And I had the consigned to memory because I was worried about Thassa's Oracle, but like, okay, sure, you know, I can, stifle the draw trigger off of Atraxa when he brings it in. All well and good, but like, it's still a 7/7, and I killed it with a red blast. And well, what happens? He just reanimates it again. Like in that scenario, like the better card is obviously Swords to Plowshares.
Mhm.
Like draw a bunch of cards, fine. Like I'm just trying to get you dead as fast as possible. So if I can make you waste your turn doing a thing, great. But if I have to respond to it and then you're gonna get it back, like I don't know. I had to lose 2 cards for him to draw 5 cards. It just
Mhm.
didn't work out. So that's where I'm at with this deck. I think it's the deck to play for sure right now. But I would say don't fall into the play patterns of old Rug Delver.
So hear me out. Based
Mhm.
on what you're talking about getting them dead as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And my rationale for wanting to do things that are away from Questing Druid, because it seems like the weakest card in the deck that also is requiring a splash of a third color that you just apparently don't need.
Well, I
But
wouldn't say it requires a splash of a third color. The third color is a bonus.
right. Well, I'm saying that like you wouldn't play Ren's Resolve or Reckless,
No.
whatever, Reckless Impulse naturally,
Sure.
right? Like, granted,
Correct.
don't get me like I understand that like Crescent Druid is an instant, so you get to do it. You seek the beast, you get to do it at instant speed. But
Right.
like, you wouldn't play those cards otherwise if it didn't have the incidental body attached to have the upside of being a 3-for-1 at times. And as somebody who likes controlling the top of the library, have you considered and or thought about power balance?
Power Balance is an interesting card, but I think I'd rather play Counterbalance, in truth.
So
And there is
that's
one
what I
in the
want to talk
board.
about.
I actually apparently I sold all of my counterbalances, so I have to get more counterbalances.
Zach,
Um,
if you need some altered counterbalances, boy, do I
do you
got them
have
for
just
you.
extra altered
I
counterbalances?
do have extra altered counterbalances, yes.
Yeah, I don't know when I got rid of my counterbalances, but I went through my whole collection looking for counterbalances and I didn't have any. Power
Hmm.
Balance is interesting. Um, the issue with Power Balance is it's not like a miracle, Phil. So like if my opponent plays Ponder and I flip a Delver of Secrets, I don't think I get to play it, right?
You do. You get to cast the Delver.
Do you?
Yeah, it doesn't care about timing restrictions. The resolution of casting the spell is part of the counterbalance ability.
Oh,
So,
okay. All
and,
right.
and
Well,
so my thought as to why so in the times that I've tested counterbalance, it's obviously good when you line up the CMCs because you want to be able to stop whatever they're doing, right? That's the fight you're usually having. The problem with power balance when I played it is, let's say they cast Ponder and then you flip the Delver. Now the difference between what counterbalance and power balance does, and we have an episode about this when it first came out, and we talked about it, but power balance is not reactionary. So like if you play, it's like it's not disruptive. I should say, power balance is not disrupting your opponent because it's like if they ponder and you flip a Delver, they still get the ponder. You just get a Delver now. So it's a card
mm,
advantage engine. It's a mana cheat, right? Like it is not something that is. It is not disruptive. It is not changing how your opponent has to behave because they know that whatever they're doing is still going to happen, even if the power balance is on the table, unless like you flip over Spell Pierce or something, right?
Yeah.
But the reason that I think that power balance, every time I see the players bring in counterbalance in like the mirror or something, where it's like they want to be disruptive against the opponent, is I'm like, I feel like power balance to overwhelm the opponent, knowing that the mechanics of like wanting to line up the CMCs are the same. Because especially if you're playing something extremely proactive and wanting to get them dead as quickly as possible, if you're playing something like Bolt or Chain Lightning, that like every time they cast a one drop, you just get the free Bolt off the top. Or
Yeah.
if you're looking to like stack your deck to like clear the top based on what they're going to play, you can also stack the like if you think like
True. Yeah.
you can stack the Power Blast, and then like when they cantrip, you catch something that's on the board. Like I mean, it needs testing. Don't get me wrong. Like it's
Sure.
not it's
Sure.
obviously
Sure.
not football, but I think that like I have seen my thoughts on not playing Delver, but seeing players across the table and hearing what you're talking about like wanting to get them dead as quickly as possible and be proactive. That all of the stuff where people move towards counterbalance, which is more disruptive and less proactive, against something like the mirror, where a lot of times it comes down to whoever draws, like whoever has more resources in the fights over Murktide or whatever, like because it comes down to like Power Blast versus Murktide and blah blah blah. Like I don't know. I think power balance is one of the areas that is underexplored, with red coming back in, because there hasn't been really time or effort
Yeah. It's true.
to explore that stuff.
Yeah, I like this idea. I think I might try it as a one of in the sideboard and see what happens. Or maybe like it's good in the exact same spot too. Like right, if you're playing against another Delver deck, throwing a power balance in or a counterbalance, you're gonna get the same kind of, not the same value, but like similar value.
I
It's
think
worth
that like
checking out.
the times, I mean, as somebody who plays a lot of counterbalance, I find that counterbalance is very slow to be a disruptive element against combo decks right now,
Yeah,
because a lot of the combo decks are they don't involve things that counterbalance would otherwise be able to disrupt. Like counterbalance is very good against combo decks that are dark ritual combo decks, right? Like if they're playing,
yeah,
if they're storm, counterbalance is obviously good. But like, and it's good because like you usually want to leave a counterbalance on one, and the way that they would fight over a counterbalance these days, if they're not playing abrupt decay post board, is the Veil of Summer. If you can catch the Veil of Summer, usually it's pretty tough for them to go off in a way where they can get enough storm through your counterbalance if it's unprotected, and then your other stuff can fight over whatever. But
yeah.
counterbalance against something like Oops, too slow. Counterbalance against something that's any combo deck that's Ancient Tomb, your CMCs are not going to line up.
Oh yeah,
Like against Cephalid Breakfast or Nadu combo, they have Cavern of Souls. Like against Doomsday, they again like if they can play too fast, and also the stuff that they're looking to resolve is a 3-mana spell, and then it's backed by Cavern and cycling abilities.
yeah.
So like it's like counterbalance really does not line up against the combo sphere of Legacy right now. And so like I mean obviously I leave it in, like I'm playing some number of counterbalance in my deck. Like if I'm playing against combo, I'll leave it in because it's not a dead card the way that like my shit pile of white cards is. But it is not the same, like, oh, counterbalance is the card you need, because not every deck is storm that's trying to set
You
up
know,
a sequence.
you know what I replaced counterbalance with in that slot, Phil? I replaced it with extract. And
See,
it did me dirty. It did me dirty. So I had it. So the way the reanimate Doomsday matchup worked out is he reanimated, then he Doomsdayed, then he reanimated. As far as like the games were concerned, and
mm-hmm,
so I got caught in the trap of I saw Doomsday. So I saw reanimate initially, and
mm-hmm,
of course I was like, okay, bring in extract, bring in graveyard hate and stuff. And I I know here's the thing. I know Peter is a Doomsday gamer, and he did Dark Ritual and he did Lotus Petal, but I was so caught up in missing my Dragon's Rage Chandler triggers that I wasn't paying enough attention in the sideboard, and I should have realized that, like, yeah, he's obviously on Doomsday, and I should sideboard for the juke. Um, and of course, um, like I think I flipped extract on the Delver, right? So he saw
mm-hmm.
it, and then he cast Doomsday, and I'm like, ugh, rough. So he cast Doomsday. I extract because I'm like, let's just see, right? Of course, he's got two Thassa's Oracles, so I'm not going to take a Thassa's Oracle because that's not going to do anything for me. I take the Cavern of Souls. It was cycler, Cavern of Souls, Thassa's. I was like, best case scenario, he doesn't like decide to do the thing this turn, this coming up turn. He's like, I'm going to be on the long plan, and then I can work up a counterspell situation. but I don't have it right now. So I've got to extract, take the cavern, and go from there. Unfortunately, he just was like, I'm going to slam it, and he did, which I think is the right play anyhow, because then like worst case scenario, next turn you slam it again, and if I don't have a counter spell both times, like game's over, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're not a believer in extract.
Not for I think not like if you're a chip pile of white cards deck, I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think uh if you are a Delver deck, if you are a tempo deck, extract is not where you want to be.
Hey, Zach, you want to know why I think where this is a good lesson of when we talk about things to highlight for if it fits your needs?
Yeah.
In our episode where we talk about extract, I was using extract as a tool for me and my ship pile of white cards deck as a way to retake control of the narrative of the game that started with
Yes.
Impufo Reanimate Attracta was the thing that I always had to, my behavior had to change in order for that to be a thing. Whereas I don't think that's the case for Delver. Because you being Days Wasteland, in a way that like they could do their thing and not have to respect or change their behavior on anything that I had to do.
Correct.
Because you're Days Wasteland and they know you're Days Wasteland, they have to behave and respect Days Wasteland.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so you have more tension there.
Here's the thing also is that every other creature for you, every other creature in that deck is a pittance. I'll terminus it, off swords it, whatever. You have answers for the creatures in that deck. The only thing you don't have answers for is the velocity of an Atraxa backed up by several other things, right?
Yeah.
So that's the card that matters to you, right? For me, like any 5, if they animate dead a troll, if they get Archon, what have you, all of that stuff, I'm gonna lose to any of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, assuming that like they don't do so much damage to them with a reanimate that like I can just bolt them, right? I'm gonna lose to almost any creature that they get. My job is to keep those creatures off the board entirely, or if in a pinch, bounce them with like Vapor Snag or Brazen Borrower or Petty Theft or whatever.
Yeah. As a
tempo them.
Yeah, you are responsible for making sure that they never get to do their thing. Whereas because I have access to a broader scope of tools as the control player, that like I can let them do their thing. They just can't do a specific kind of thing.
Yeah,
and that changes the tools that we would want to use, which is it's interesting because the space that I've been in is last episode we talked about how there have been times where control decks have had to take Delver technology, essentially tempo technology, as a means of how to navigate how to build their deck conceptually to be effective, because Days Wasteland dictates so much of what is viable in a format that when it becomes the best thing to do, that like if you're trying to do something that is also powerful, essentially you have the control tools, but you still are fundamentally designed in a way that is just as
correct.
You do know what I'm saying? I know we talked about it last time where we were saying like, oh yeah, once Control figured out that it was better to also play 4 Ponder and lower their land count, that was actually the better way to go. And there was a time where there was a point where Miracles only needed to deal with like certain kinds of decks that it cared about, and everything else was it was favored against. So they just chose not to respect those decks as much and went all the way down to like 19 lands, way fewer basics, and just like streamline and be more threat dense and lower their curve because they needed to keep up with Delver with like Treasure Cruise and stuff. And I have hearing you talk about Delver, and it has made me endeavor to do something similar. And I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, I think for that, but like really diving into that, I think that should be on our next episode, because we're what 30 minutes in on this one.
We're gonna tease. So we're teasing next episode. If you want to hear the theory, so we got a bunch of feedback on last episode where everybody was talking about how they really enjoy the theory crafting that we like to do, because Zach and I like this is literally when we're off camera. This is all Zach and I talk about. Like I'm sitting in he's telling me, he's like, I'm back on Delver and it feels like I've been rejuvenated, and I'm like, okay, so we just got to get you your 4th bulk, and then everything will be together. And then I just tell him like play Chart of Course instead of Questing Druid, and we argue about it for 6 hours. So we'll tease that one. And if you guys need to, if you guys want to talk about what you're doing theory crafting wise and want to write an article for returnofdodos.com, I mean, get in here, DM me.
Yeah.
Let's get it going.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.
Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.